Yes, Eric, it works. Oh.
Okay, we're almost there. Just a second.
Okay.
In order to join this, how did teachers join this? Some teachers are saying they can't find it.
It'll be on the Suffern Central YouTube page. The school district one, not the school board. So go to YouTube and then put in Suffern Central School District.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're live.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lisa Weber, the acting superintendent for the Suffern Central School District. I am joined this evening by a number of my colleagues who I will introduce shortly. Today's presentation will follow a similar pattern to our most recent presentations. We have some information we're going to share with you. After that time, we will open up the chat to answer live questions. So as I mentioned, I'm joined by a number of my colleagues, Dr. Lisa Castaldo, our Assistant Superintendent for PPS.
Hi, everyone.
Mrs. Suzanne Perio, our Director of Instruction. Angela Aguilar, our Cherry Lane Principal. Kelly Benatti, our Connor Principal. Dr. Castellane Sloatsburg Principal. Dr. Ivy Montebello Principal. And Mrs. Dress, our Viola Principal. We also have in the background our support from Jenny Mermelstein and from our Director of Technology, Eric Coronado. Okay, Angela. So we have, here's what we're going to cover tonight. I'm going to do a short welcome, COVID-19 screening and tracing from Dr. Castaldo. Ms. Perio will speak about our robust remote learning overview for September. Our principals will talk some about expectations and some common upcoming events, and then we will close things up and I'll open it up for live questions in the chat. So it is my pleasure to let you know that school is starting, just not in person. We will be starting our first day for students will be September 10th. That is assuming the board approves tomorrow night. Our calendar changed to move one of our superintendent's conference days from Election Day to September 9th to give us just one more day to help prepare our teachers. But remote learning for all of our students will begin on Thursday, September 10th. We are very excited about that. In September, we will be in our robust remote format. And assuming all goes well, both here and throughout the state, by the end of the September, we will be implementing our hybrid learning model. During September, and even in some cases before school officially starts, we will be providing some in-person experiences for our children. Kindergarten orientation, meet the teacher opportunities, opportunities for materials pickup, and other types of things that the principals will talk about a little later in the presentation. If you watched the presentation on Thursday night, you know that I spoke in some detail about the decision-making process, how we got to this point, what were some of the major factors in consideration. I invite you, if you did not listen Thursday night, to go back to Thursday nights. That's recorded and appears on this same YouTube page. And it's in the first 15 minutes where I explain that rationale. Particularly for elementary parents, though, I want to take a minute to talk about probably one of the biggest concerns, most frequent concerns I've heard, and that is the concern about the burden this places on working parents. I want to let you know that I fully understand that. I recognize that this is a really difficult situation for parents of young children. My children are a little bit older, but I do still have two in elementary school. Most of the people on this call still have elementary school children. This is really living it right next to you. We're living it too. Obviously, it was a factor in the decision-making process, one that, we understood was going to really be a challenge, and we recognize that. We're very hopeful that we'll be moving to the hybrid model, and in that hybrid model, we will have kindergarten and first grade in 4 days a week. We have found a way to make that happen. Unfortunately, the way to make that happen did mean we need to do some reallocating. And so our pre-K programs that we've been hosting at Suffern Central for the last several years, our pre-K students will no longer have Suffern Central as an option for this year only. They will still have pre-K at any of our community-based organizations that we work with. They will have a pre-K option there, but we did have to reallocate our staff from the pre-K programs in order to be able to bring all of our kindergartners and first graders in 4 days a week without impacting our budget. So the benefit to our 400 kindergartners and first graders is a huge benefit for them, and our pre-K students will still have pre-K this year, just not at Suffern Central. So again, another tough decision to make. Going back to the working parent situation, I have been in talks with the Y about offering some type of childcare during the day in September. They're very open to it. They're experienced with it. On a countywide basis, the Y was running the childcare in the county, the emergency childcare for frontline workers. They also offered some summer camps, so their staff are familiar with COVID-19 protocols, and they're already an approved vendor in our buildings. So, it makes sense to partner with them for a lot of reasons. I don't have the details yet, but know that we were in talks with the Y to try and help alleviate that situation. I recognize this is really hard on working families, and the families, of our elementary students are obviously the ones that are hit the hardest by this. We want to work with you. We want to help you. There's questions about how am I going, even if I am working from home, how am I going to work from home and work, keep to the robust remote timeframes. We will work together. Our teachers will work with you. We'll make it work. We'll do the best. We'll do everything we can to help make it work. So I want to let you know we didn't make this decision in a vacuum and just, say forget about it. We really do. We recognize what a hardship this is, and many of us are living it. So with that, I do want to move us along. So next, we will move on to COVID-19 screening and tracing.
Good evening, moms and dads, family members. Part of the reason why we're holding these forums is not just because we wanted to give you information, but also because Governor Cuomo had requested we hold forums, and in the forums talk about things like COVID-19 screening and testing, and then the tracing, and then also a remote plan. So we want to be sure to give you kind of the nuts and bolts of that really quickly. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time with this, but COVID-19 screening would be something that would be happening daily through the use of temperature checks at home before you would put your child on the bus or bring your child to school. A child with a temperature of 100 degrees or more is not allowed to attend school. They need to be kept at home. You would also be screening for symptoms, things like a runny nose. The list of symptoms we will have out there for you, but things like a runny nose, a cough, the temperature again, those are things you're going to be looking for before you even send your child to school. Staff will be looking for those same things as well as filling out a questionnaire each day, answering questions as to whether they can be safely in the buildings or not. You will fill out that questionnaire once a week for your child. So on the first day, once we're in hybrid, on the first day they are to attend school, you fill out that questionnaire. If a child or a staff member comes to the buildings and has some sort of symptom, then they would be put in isolation and the staff member would be sent home, or you would come to pick your child up. If you could move to the next slide, Mrs. Aguilar. If your child needs actual COVID testing, you're going to be directed to your healthcare provider to provide the testing. And if we can go to the next slide. this slide here is probably the most helpful for all of us and the one that concerns everyone the most. What are we going to do if someone has a positive COVID test or is suspected of having COVID? And we have this safety response protocol that we're going to follow. As you can see, the first level, level 1, is in red. That's like a stop sign. We're going to stop. That's if someone is COVID positive, either a student or a staff member, and we're going to step through all the pieces on here in conjunction with the Department of Health to make sure that the rest of the children and the staff and the Suffern Central community are kept safe. Likewise, levels 2, both of the 2s are either a quarantined person or a COVID test pending, and those are yellows, and we proceed with caution then. And again, we're going to step through this set of little protocol boxes that they've given us. Green is a contact of a contact. That person is fine to be in school, and again, we'll step through those protocols. So as you can see, all of these are the pieces that are in place regarding screening, testing, and contact tracing to keep all of the Suffern Central community safe. Now, I'm going to pass it on to what is the much more interesting pieces of this presentation today, and that is the robust remote that we're going to be opening in September with. Ms. Paria?
Yep. Mrs. Aguilar, you can advance the slides. Okay, so I just wanted to shed a little light on some of the decision making that went on when we were creating the plans for Robust Remote. And I also want to distinguish it from what many of you may have experienced this spring. So we're referring to our spring distance learning as crisis distance learning. And that was when we rapidly shifted from being in person to remote literally overnight. So there was very little planning that was able to happen in advance. Since then, we've literally been planning for the next school year and thinking through all of the hindsight lessons that we learned along the way. So the plans for 2020-21 have taken into account survey information from parents, students, and staff. We had surveyed all 3 parties in April and also in June. And in June, we had over 800 parents respond, and we had over 800 students respond, and hundreds of teachers respond. And that shed a lot of light as to what was working well for people and what was not working well for people. We also received 145 pages of NICED guidance that really did a great job of outlining some of the things that are expected and also took into account the forums that they had with stakeholders. We really took a lot of time and have done a lot of reading of current research. We've participated in collegial conversations with our colleagues around the county, and we've had recent professional development experiences. We also held committee meetings throughout the summer. The Robust Remote Committee meeting group had over 40 or about 40 members. We did meet multiple times. We met as whole group, and we also met by division because some of the concerns are unique to each of the levels. Mrs. Aguilar, you can advance the slides. So some of the things that really came out of all of those, pieces of feedback and all of the guidance that we received from New York State is that one of the pieces we wanted to build in for the fall was going to be a predictable daily schedule. Those of you who have had children go through the elementary schools before, you'll find a lot of familiarity with the way that the day will be designed. So we will have the block schedules that follow the A, B, C, D rotation that you're all used to. We are planning to have each morning begin with a synchronous morning meeting where attendance will be taken, where there will be special emphasis placed on social emotional learning, classroom and community building, relationship building. We also will ensure that the synchronous class instruction will be aligned to the New York State grade level standards. The other piece that was really important in the guidance was daily substantive interaction between students and teachers. So during each block of instruction, the teacher will be in the space to offer support to students as they're working. And that's a big distinction from the way that we had things set up in the spring. I also wanted to distinguish between synchronous and asynchronous learning experiences and highlight that they are just different methods and each works well for different reasons. And teachers will be utilizing both. One of the things that was made very clear in the New York State guidelines was that instructional experiences are not defined solely as a student's time spent in front of a teacher or in front of a screen, but time engaged in standards-based learning under the guidance and direction of a teacher. So your child might be engaged in standards-based learning with the screen off. And we are hoping to have opportunities for students to pick up physical materials so that they can engage in offline learning, which also was not an option in the spring. Our schedules are really built around our intervention and enrichment blocks. And that is so that we can coordinate support from all of our specialists, clinicians, and our classroom teachers to provide small group instruction and make sure that we are supporting students as best as we possibly can. The other piece is that we will be returning to our grading practices that we were using prior to the school closures. And those are our standards-based report cards that can be found on the Suffern Central website. And as always, we are going to really remain flexible in the way that we are assessing students and what we're looking for in terms of their growth and movement towards the grade level standards. All right, Mrs. Aguilar, if you'd like to advance.
Dr. Ivy? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Dr. Teresa Ivy. I'm the principal at Montebello Elementary School. You can go to the next slide, Angela. One of the things that we really wanted to point out tonight is that we are 5 individual schools, each with our own personalities, which are unique. And I'm sure that as parents, you know that just from speaking to one another, if you have friends in other schools, that there's something different about each of us. But we are all grounded in the same vision and mission, which encapsulate the high standards that make us Suffern Central. So we wanted to make sure that you're aware of the amount of time that we have spent collaborating and working together so that all of our schools reflect a model that works for all of the families, even though we are so different.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ivy. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Angela Aguilar. I'm the principal of Cherry Lane Elementary, and I just want to thank all of our parents again for joining us this evening. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about expectations and guidelines. So some general information first. Summer mailings are scheduled to go out at the end of August, which will include the students' teacher assignments. The hybrid schedule will not go out at this time until late September, and we will be following an alphabetical order to that as well. Materials and supplies, we do realize that some materials and supply lists have already gone out. So if you've purchased those, don't worry, no worries about that. We will make good use of that during remote learning and also when we get back to school. Don't worry, those supplies will be used, I'm sure. Also, we wanted to share that all of us use a ConnectEd system to communicate with our parents and our families throughout the course of the year. So please make sure that you keep an updated email address so that you are receiving updated information. Communicating with our families is very important, so we need to make sure we have the right email address to contact you should anything arise. Every school also has a Twitter account, so if you would like to follow that, that's great. If you don't have a Twitter account, that's fine. All you have to do is go to our websites. Each of those have an individual website, school website, and you can find the Twitter right there. We post a lot of information, a lot of what's happening on that as well. All right. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about attendance. I know Mrs. Perio kind of, she addressed it a little bit, but I wanted to stress that each day we will begin with a live morning meeting, and that's where attendance will be taking. So it's very important that your child is there in the morning and throughout the school day in attendance. Students will also be encouraged to keep their cameras on during those class meetings because we know how important body language and cues help teachers seek feedback and build on those trusting learning relationships and communities. We need to see the eye contact. We got to see if students are getting what they're supposed to be getting. It's the way we're going to be able to communicate with them. So having those cameras on is going to be very important during that time. If a student is unable to participate in the remote learning that day, just like if they're not able to come to school on a regular school day, we ask that you please notify our attendance clerks at each building. All right. So, and then now I'm going to talk a little bit about teaching and communication. So like we said before, teachers will provide a live standard-based instructional experience during each scheduled class period and will provide students with direct support and feedback during their scheduled class time. Breaks will be scheduled between each class period to reduce consecutive time spent on the screen. We do realize, and that will be according to the age and stage of a student. So in other words, we understand that kindergarten students might need a little bit more frequent breaks than our fifth graders. And we look at that each of the grade levels individually. Teachers will communicate due dates when applicable and will post them in their learning management system. So in other words, if they're using Seesaw, you'll see it in Seesaw